Welcome back to Wall Again, where passion meets music, and we are continuing our countdown of the top 100 classic rock albums of all time. We're at number 90 on the list, and it's Generation Terrorists by Manic Street Preachers. So this was the debut album by the Preachers. It was released in 1992, and it was released through Columbia Records. It was produced by Steve Brown, and of course the band are from Wales. I'm very proud of that fact. And you can hear a lot of, I suppose, the songwriting and the lyrical content. It's coming from, I suppose, a Welsh background in terms of their experiences of being, part of the UK, but maybe being considered a little bit left out, shall we say. And that really comes across on this album. The lineup for this album was Richie Edwards on guitar, Nicky Wire on bass, James Dean Bradfield on vocals, guitars, and Sean Moore on drums. Now that's the credited lineup on the album notes. However, in actual fact, Richie Edwards didn't play any guitar and Nicky Wire didn't play any bass on this album. It was all James Dean Bradfield. He covered all the guitar parts and all the bass parts on the album. He also covered all the vocal parts on the album, with Sean Moore, the drummer, providing some of the backing vocals. But essentially the way the Manic Street Preachers worked, it was a very strange band in their inception. So one half of the band would contribute to all the songwriting. So basically all the lyrics for all the songs. They wouldn't contribute to any music, just lyrics. And that was Richie Edwards and Nicky Wire. And they seemed to have a certain view on the world. They were very much from the alternative culture in the 1990s in the UK. They were very anti-establishment. They really didn't believe in the system of government in the UK at the time. And they were just not happy with a lot of things that were happening socially and politically at that time in the early 1990s. So this album covers a lot of those themes. Also the fact that they were Welsh, that brings a different dynamic to it. So yeah, you can hear that throughout the whole album lyrically. And then James Dean Bradfield, I suppose it was his job to take those words, those lyrics, and turn them into songs with music. And he did an exceptional job of that. As I said before, he plays all the instruments, all the musical instruments apart from the drums on it. So he's actually a fantastic musician. If you listen through the album, you can really hear he lets loose on a lot of songs, and he really sounds like a shreddy type guitar player to me. Someone that probably would have fit into the scene in the 1980s hair metal, no problem, and I'm sure there was a little bit of influence from that. I actually saw the Manic Street Preachers live back in 2019. They were supporting Bon Jovi in Dublin, and they played their set and they were really, really good. I thought it was a bit of an odd choice, Manic Street Preachers and Bon Jovi, to kind of come from two different styles and two different eras and two different geographies of music. I didn't think they gel that well, but Manic Street Preachers actually played a version of Sweet Child of Mine from Guns N' Roses. So I think James Dean Bradfield listened to a lot of metal and hair metal from America when he was, I suppose, learning guitar, and this obviously influenced on the style of guitar playing on this album, and you can hear it all over this album. There's elements of punk, there's elements of indie, elements of alternative rock, but there's also elements of metal, and there's also elements of that virtuoso guitar style that we consider so synonymous with the 1980s hair metal scene. So that's my take on the sound of the album, but it's very strange the way all members were credited. Of course, Richie Edwards would unfortunately disappear, never to be found again in the mid-1990s. This was a tragic event for the band. They decided to continue on making albums as a three-piece, just with Nicky Wire, James Dean Bradfield and Sean Moore. And they continued writing songs and using lyrics that Richie Edwards had basically penned. And they would use those lyrics right up until an album called The Journal for Plagued Lovers, I believe. Which was one of the albums that the Manic Street Preachers released, which had essentially the majority of the album, or I think maybe all of the album, had Richie Edwards lyrics on it. So very fitting tribute to Richie and his contribution to the songwriting in the band. So just moving on then, I suppose, to the tracks on the album. Well, my favourite tracks, Born to End, I think is a fantastic track. Motorcycle Emptiness obviously is the big hit on the album, which everybody knows, and they still play it live to this day. I think it's a fantastic song. It's actually quite long, it clocks in around 5 to 6 minutes, but brilliant guitar riffs in that, brilliant guitar licks and solos and stuff there. Also the bridge is excellent, and the different sections that James Dean Bradfield puts together, really, really, really good. I think it's an excellent song, one of the best Manic Street Preachers songs that they have, in my opinion. And then obviously You Love Us, I think that was the first single that was released on the album in 1991, the year before the album was released. But at the end of that one, I was actually surprised when I listened through again to the album. The end of that, there's a blistering guitar solo, which totally doesn't match with the song. And this is kind of what I'm saying with James Dean Bradfield's, I suppose, influence. He's bringing it out in that song there, and the guitar playing is blistering on it. But it's a bit of a disjointed album, to be honest. The styles, you've got punk rock on some songs. As I said, you've got metal on other songs. Then you've got alternative rock on other songs. You've got spoken word tracks and stuff like that there as well, which I get what the band were trying to do. They're trying to deliver a message. But I thought at times this album was just a little bit disjointed. It's also a very long album. I think they used the full CD, so we're talking 75 odd minutes of music. For a debut album, it's ambitious, but we were in the time of CD in 1991 and 1992, so they were, I suppose, encouraged or they wanted to give some sort of big artistic expression and release this album with a full CD worth of material. But I just think it's too long. I think if you condense this album down to maybe a 40-minute album, it will be all killer, no filler. But I think there's a lot of filler on this album, and I think it's to the detriment of the album and the listening experience. So I probably would have put this album at like 7, possibly 8 out of 10 if it was condensed and all of the filler was removed. But I'm going to give it a mark of 6 out of 10 because I just think that all the extra material really takes away from the listening experience. And I find this is an album I've listened through a number of times, but if I'm going to reach for this album again, I'll definitely be pressing the skip button a number of times. There's no doubt about that. So let me know in the comments below what you think of the Manic Street Preachers, Generation Terrorists. I would love to hear your feedback. If you could also like the video, if you liked it, hit the like button. And if you could also subscribe, I would greatly appreciate it. And I will talk to you on the next one. Bye for now.